Mr. Chief Justice, thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking me.
You know, you look around these chambers at all of these former justices on the wall, but you are the longest serving of them all, more than 3 decades of service in jurisprudence on the Texas Supreme Court. But it seems like this next year may be your last when you surpass the mandatory retirement age for state judges. What more would you like to accomplish to finish your career strong?
Well, we're coming out of a very difficult time with the pandemic, but we're looking for new ways to make our system more effective. For example, an easy one is we never heard of remote proceedings, basically. I mean, telephone calls every once in a while. Before the pandemic, now they're standard fare in a lot of our proceedings, but they don't work in others. And so we're trying to figure out, when do they help people? When do they work better? When do they not? And that whole shift in mentality is making us think, again, we've thought about it before, how can we do our jobs? How can we process the cases that come to us in ways that make it easier on the parties, the lawyers, the public, so that the experience they have in sometimes difficult cases is a good one.
I want to ask you about the effect that COVID had on the judiciary system. You said in your State of the Judiciary address back in April that we could learn some positive changes out of the tragedy that was COVID, but you recognize that there are still a lot of issues with accessibility when it comes to especially Texans of limited means and children accessing the court system. What more do we need to do in order to make the justice system applicable and accessible and fair to every Texan, no matter their means?
Well, we need to do lots. The judiciary, not just in Texas, but as an institution, has not been customer service related, oriented. Sometimes I say that if the court system were a business, we'd be bankrupt, because we just don't tend to the needs of the people who have to come and see us as much as we should. So we're looking at all kinds of things. We have been very supportive of funding for access to justice for the poor in Texas. The legislature has been very supportive over the years. It's not a partisan issue in Texas. Both sides have been very supportive, worked for it, for veterans, victims of domestic violence, and just the poor who have difficulty getting their problems resolved in court. We're experimenting with kiosks so that make it even yet easier for a person who needs legal counsel to get it without having to go somewhere, having to go downtown or to some office, or certainly not the courthouse, where they have to take off work, get child care, drive places they don't usually go, and then when they get there, sit around and wait until the system can get to them. So we're trying to streamline all of that and look at our whole docketing processes. This is especially true, for example, in high volume family courts, where we can try to figure out ways to reduce waiting times for people who are there for usually many times short hearings. All of those kinds of things to just make the system work more efficiently, so that if it were a business, and it's not, it's a justice system, but if it were, we would be responding to the needs of the people that are coming to us.
So much of our legal system is based on centuries and centuries of precedent, right, but the 21st century may help it a little bit as well. So right, working to bring it into the Zoom age.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm glad you compared the court to a business, because there has been a lot of effort this year in order to cater more to all of the businesses that are coming to Texas. You advocated for specialty business courts in order to streamline some complex commercial litigation. The legislature ended up approving that idea. Throughout the legislative process, though, when legislators were pushing to create these new specialty courts, there was some concern about what that could mean. Some critics raised the idea that this could amount to special treatment of powerful businesses and give the governor too much influence over the judges he appoints to these courts, for example. What do you make of the critics, and why do you believe these courts will help Texans?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the criticisms because they give us an opportunity to respond. We can't dust off these legitimate concerns about how the system's going to operate. But this is not brand new. Other states have had similar kinds of dockets and procedures. And the idea itself is very familiar to Texas. We already have specialty courts. The family courts in the urban areas are all specialty courts. That's all they handle. Some of the family courts only handle particular kinds of family cases. On the civil side, again, from time to time there has been a division of dockets in civil courts so that judges who feel like they're better at doing a particular kind of case, or it works better just to have those cases in court, can do that. On the criminal side, we already have felonies and misdemeanors. We have drug courts. We have veterans courts. We are trying to use legitimate differences in cases and dockets to move things along so that people will feel like the justice system is responsive. For the business courts, we want the business courts to be fair, and they're going to be, but to be perceived to be fair. The criticism that business is special, I think, is answered by these cases will involve, most of the time, businesses on both sides. And so it's just a way of making sure that the complexities of those cases get addressed, and that, just to take an example, if you've got a simple car wreck case and you're just trying to get it tried, you're not sitting there behind two big businesses duking it out over huge issues. And by the same token, if you're that case, you're not sitting behind a simple car wreck case waiting for 2 days or however long it takes for the jury to come back with a verdict. So it's just a way of structuring the dockets so that they're more efficient.
You alluded to the perception of fairness there.
Yeah.
That is also a challenge, it seems, the judicial branch nationwide is facing. The Texas Politics Project found last year that 26% of registered voters in Texas have a favorable view of the Texas court system. What do judges like you need to do in order to convince more Texans that the judicial branch is fair and reliable?
We need to make it work better. So here's what we can't do. We cannot respond to politics. We can't change our decisions. We can't rule one way or another way because somebody wants us to or somebody doesn't want us to. All of that is off limits. The independent judiciary has got to call it like it sees it. And that's where a lot of the criticism is coming from. What the media portrays, and what the people hear, is that, oh, well, there was this decision, and what do you think of that? Well, I think that's terrible. Well, and then there was this decision. Well, that was terrible too. And so you come away with a kind of a negative feeling about the court system. Whereas when people know, for example, that courts in Texas are working very hard to make sure that people with mental health issues in a case are accommodated. So that's in the criminal system a lot. We have diversion programs to try to help treat people who are not acting out of criminal intent so much as medical issues, guardianships, family cases, children cases. When say, here's what the court system is doing. We've done surveys nationally, and people say, oh, well, you tell me that. I didn't know that. That's great. When we tell people how successful our veterans courts have been, everybody is, well, that's a really good thing to do. But not everybody knows about that. So I think one of the things we're going to do is try to increase those initiatives to be sure that the courts appear to be, to the public, legitimately responsive to their concerns about justice, not about anything political, just about justice. And then to do a better job of talking to you about it, of trying to make sure that the people know.
Yeah. Many of the issues you just mentioned are nonpartisan. At least in Texas,
Right.
they garner support from both parties. They are at least bipartisan. It is hard to separate from politics when the justices on the Supreme Court are associated with parties, and it's not even 5-4 or 6-3. It is 9-0, dominated by the Republican Party. In fact, Texas is one of only 8 states that elects judges in a partisan election. Do you think that's the best way to do it, or should Texas move away from partisan judicial elections?
Well, I'm on the record for 50 years saying it's a terrible system. I told the New York Times the other day that I thought it was terrible, and they said, could they print that? And I said, sure, and they did. So, but it's no secret. I think it's an awful system. I understand accountability. I understand that judges need to be accountable to the people, but elections don't make that happen. People get a ballot, particularly in big counties, but even sometimes in little counties, they get a ballot. There's all these names of judges. People don't know who those judges are. They don't know whether they're doing a good job or a bad job. And so the accountability part of the justification for doing it is diminished. Meanwhile, yes, the politics, particularly in this day and age, is terrible. And the commentary on the courts, on our court, is always, well, there's 8 Republicans there. Well, almost all the judges, I think all the judges in Harris County are Democrats, Dallas County are Democrats, Travis County. But the people have chosen that. We've tried to talk them out of it. We've said this is terrible. Look at other states. When they elect judges, it gets very political. We really don't want to go down that road. But if you say, give me your right to vote, they're going to say, well, we don't want to do that.
Do you think it's even practical to fully separate politics from the judiciary? Because, I mean, if you replace it with an appointment system, say by the governor or legislators, those are partisans appointing presumably their favored parties as well. So how do you push past politics in a way that is more pure?
The way that I think is essential is that you've just got the culture of the judiciary just has to be divorced from the political system. And the mindset of the judge's character, the approach to the bench, all has to be completely out of politics. As you say, that's very hard. And when judges are running for office on partisan ballots, they have to go back to the courtroom and hear cases and not pay any attention at all to whether a party was supportive of their election or a lawyer. You have to divorce all of that. And I think both in the appointed systems and the elected systems, you can build that culture of strict adherence to the rule of law, divorcing those kinds of considerations in the judiciary. So it involves constant training. We're constantly training our judges and trying to help them see how important that is.
Yeah. How do you do that personally? I mean, it's no secret you're a conservative, lifelong Republican, correct? But when you put the robe on and try to weigh the facts of a case, how do you make sure that you divorce yourself from politics and try to follow the rule of law?
Well, I've been elected 7 times to statewide office in Texas, which is a record for, I think, our court, maybe across the board. But in my own view of the job, you just that's over here and this is over there. And I've never been very political in a partisan sense. And so it's not so hard for me to kind of think of myself as more independent. But judges have to do this all the time, and the public doesn't always appreciate this. But you have to ask yourself every day, is that fair? Is that really fair? Did you really consider nothing but the law and the facts? I mean, you have to kind of hold yourself to a reevaluation and never get into the idea of thinking, I'm the judge, I call it, and that's the way it is. Yeah. And working, for me, it's helpful to work with the political branches, the governor's office and the legislature, and both sides of the aisle in the legislature, both Republicans and Democratic representatives and senators, and present myself to them as a judge. And this is what the judiciary needs. And they're going to tell me the truth. If they don't think I'm doing that, they're not going to wink and nod. They're going to say, oh, Judge, I'm not sure. So it's just a constant training discipline to do that.
I want to ask you one more thing about the optics of the court, especially in the U.S. Supreme Court. They have come under fire recently from critics questioning the ethics of some justices. They've just adopted a code of ethics, if you will,
right,
following pressure from some gifts, donations, and favors from wealthy and powerful donors and interests to some justices, of course, Clarence Thomas in particular. Do you think the U.S. Supreme Court needs to get a better grasp on their optics and their ethics when they interact with these wealthy interests?
Well, I think I'm not going to tell them what to do, and certainly I'm not going to tell them what to do when I come from a state and my position is dependent upon not just contributions, but contributions to me as an office holder. And we're all the judges that have to campaign for office worry constantly that aspect of running for office, the contributions, just looks terrible. And we've done polls on this, and people think, oh yeah, that looks terrible, all right. And the judges themselves, when you ask them, they say, it looks terrible. Now, again, as I just said, I hope we have the discipline to not let it matter to us. But we have to worry about the optics, and we have to worry about how does it look? I think the U.S. Supreme Court's adoption of an ethics code is a reasonable and responsible step toward in response to the criticism that they've gotten. And I think the criticism is going to continue, whether it's because of some trip or something like that, or whether it's the decision that you signed off on. And I think by having the code, they can respond to it and say, we're adhering to a code. So I think I'm very glad they did what they did.
I'm glad you brought up how this works in Texas, because let's say a plaintiff puts a briefcase of cash in your office and says, thank you for ruling this way. That would be bribery. But
yeah.
But
right.
a lawyer could donate thousands to your campaign and then show up the next day and argue in front of you in this chamber.
Yep, absolutely. It's
Why?
horrible. I mean, I've said it's horrible for 50 years. And back in the early 90s, Tom Phillips and I pioneered in limits on campaign contributions. Well, the first time I ran back in 1988 for this court, there were no limits. A contributor the sky was the limit. It could give you as much as he wanted. We said, oh no, you can't give more than $5,000 per person, which seems like a lot. In a $2 million race, it's not really. Kept law firms. The legislature came in behind us and enacted all of those caps as law. And they've been the law ever since. And it helps a little bit because you can say, well, we do have limits on how much people can give. But it's just a very troublesome side effect of Texas' way of selecting judges.
Yeah. One of the issues that has politicized the court more than anything in recent memory is, of course, abortion. One with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, but you have also dealt with some of these issues in the Texas Supreme Court. Just last week, I covered the hearing led by 20 women in Texas. Many of them almost died from serious pregnancy complications because they argue Texas's abortion ban does not give doctors the ability to intervene, even when in their best medical judgment they believe it's necessary for the mother's life. I understand you may not be able to get into some of the specifics of these pending cases, but if you could share what you can, what was going through your mind when you're thinking about the challenge to Texas's abortion ban right now?
I can't say much about it because, as you say, the case is pending, and I wouldn't want anything I said to be taken as an indication of what I think about the case or what my colleagues think. But I can say very readily that one thing that's going through, I think, all of our minds, certainly through my mind, as I'm sitting here listening to the arguments and knowing the stories of the plaintiffs who have filed the suit, that not argued so much here, but in the district court, you're thinking to yourself, I want to do everything possible to make sure that you as a reporter, as the people that were sitting here in the room, the people who are watching on the webcast, come away thinking, well, that was fair. However it comes out, that was fair. And then when the decision does come out, I do hope there'll be some recollection of that and thinking they listened. It's not a political decision for them. It's a legal decision. And they have to decide cases all the time that are difficult. We just want it to be, we want to not ever do anything that makes it look like somebody didn't get a fair shake.
The state here is arguing that the women in the Zarowski lawsuit do not have standing because this is an issue that in a way no longer affects them because they're not pregnant or don't plan to be in the future. Can you elaborate on how that issue or that argument struck you?
No, I really can't.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so it's an important argument in the case. It's a kind of a technical argument, it seems like, to some people. And as I think you could tell from the questions from the bench during the case, everybody appreciates that there are different sides to it, even though it is a kind of a technical legal argument. But I can't tell you my own thoughts.
Fair enough. One more political issue, and then I just want to cover a couple more topics with you. You've been over at the legislature more often than previous sessions. Notably, you oversaw a historic moment in the Texas Senate when you swore in Lieutenant Governor Patrick to take on a role somewhat like yours in presiding over the impeachment trial of Attorney General Ken Paxton. I'm sure you were following those proceedings. What did you make of the legislative branch's attempt at acting in a quasi-judicial manner in weighing the arguments in this case?
Well, that's their responsibility under the Constitution. the U.S. Congress has it as well, and they're supposed to do what they did when they think it's justified. So I think it's because they hardly ever do it. I think it's kind of, it doesn't seem to fit right when you're just a layperson watching it. I mean, what does it mean to have a trial of 31 senators sitting around at desks? I mean, it's just different from what you think of as opposed to a courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I think that would strike people as unusual, just as it did in the impeachment proceedings in the Congress. But when they think they have to do it, they have to do what the Constitution says.
Do you think they did a good job administering fair and impartial justice?
I can't say that. I think.
Yes.
I think they work very hard at it. I was, as you mentioned, I go over there quite a bit on judicial business, and it's not like this room, which is pretty solemn and quiet and orderly, and over there's more moving around. But I thought I was struck by how devoted, how dedicated everybody was to making sure they were there, they were watching, they were participating, they were doing their best.
All right. Lastly, we mentioned earlier that you are the longest serving Supreme Court justice in Texas history, but next year should be your last because there was an election just last month with 14 propositions on the ballot. Only one of them failed, and it was the one that would have raised the mandatory retirement age for state judges from 75 to 79. A lot of people saw that as an attempt to keep you around for a little while longer. What did you make when you saw the election returns come back and see that one being the only one that failed?
I had nothing to do with the amendment. I didn't know about it, even though I was going over the legislature pretty often until it passed the House, and I'm still not sure where it came from. But I don't know if I know several other judges who are going to leave office because the age is not raised. Some years ago, I did some research into why we have the age limit in the first place. And it was a legitimate response to concern that some people, when they enter public office, stay longer than they should. You said, well, the people should vote them out. Well, maybe so, but sometimes it doesn't work that way. And so I didn't take offense to it. My wife said she was going to vote against it, and she said enough's enough. And we're looking forward to continuing my work and continuing to help the judiciary, very much to help access to justice for the poor. So it doesn't hurt my feelings.
All right. Age is certainly a hot button issue nationally in the era of Joe Biden and Donald Trump. A lot of people argue that once you hit a certain age, you're just not as sharp as you used to be, and you shouldn't be in these positions of power. Do you feel capable and ready and able to continue this job if you could?
I do, but other people should judge that. And I think, fortunately, I have colleagues who would come to me and say, maybe you should think about something else, which has not happened. But I understand the people's concern about that. It comes up from time to time. Law firms have retirement policies. Lots of times they just ignore them and let the lawyer, if he or she is able to continue practicing. So that's not really an option in the judiciary. And I think, importantly, if you have worked very hard, as I've tried to do, and try to make a difference. You'll keep doing that whether your name's on the door upstairs or not.
You intend to stay in public service in some way, shape. What are your plans for retirement, I should ask?
I don't have any definite plans, and I think the best course is to do the best I can do through the end of next year. But I do plan to continue on the administrative work I've done, to continue to build the court system, to make it better, to make the perception of it better, to make sure that we respond to concerns that it's not diverse enough, and that we are actively trying to make the court system and the bar look to the people, be to the people, the handlers of the justice system that they want. So that involves a lot of those kinds of things. I know diversity has become a very political word recently, but it doesn't, just making it political doesn't do away with the issue, and doesn't do away with the responsibility of those of us who administer the system to make sure that it looks fair to everybody. So continue with that work. The National Center for State Courts has had for years what they call a blueprint for racial justice that I've been part of the leadership of, and that's we're trying to stay out of politics, but we take the point of people who say you should worry about making sure, if you can't use the word diversity, making sure that it's fair, and making sure that people feel like that the composition of the judiciary, the composition of the bar, the recruitment, the opportunities for advancement, the way we treat people in the courtroom, all of that is fair.
Do you think the diversity of the bench around Texas is sufficient now?
No, it's not.
What do we need to do to change that?
Well, it's a problem that the bar has struggled with for a long time, and it's just hard for various different reasons. It's been studied lots and lots to recruit people that whose ethnicity is underrepresented in the bar. I mean, on the one hand, you have the choice to go to law school or not, but sometimes that choice doesn't look realistic to people, and you need to find out why. And the nature of the judiciary in Texas is changing, and the voters get to decide. But you still have to be mindful of the overall fairness and the confidence that the people have that it's being fair.
Yeah. Well, last question for you, sir. After 35 years on this court and a long time leading it, what is the legacy that you leave Texas?
Well, things have changed a lot. We've worked on a lot of programs that we have used to make the system run better, more efficiently. We're still not there, but we worked on that. And to appear responsive to people. So we've done it, mental health, Children's Commission, with criminal justice reform, juvenile justice reform, court efficiency, kind of across the board, not cases and not decisions, but just making sure that the system runs more to the liking of the people that it serves. And I hope that I leave a legacy that justice is crucial to our society, and the courts are there to uphold and protect it.
Mr. Chief Justice, thank you so much for your time.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.